Killian Mercer returned home shortly after sunrise, with another woman's perfume clinging to his shirt. His phone rested face down on the passenger seat. 23 missed calls. All from Nerissa. His pregnant wife had spent the night asking where he was, whether he was safe, and when he planned to return home. Killian had read every message. He answered none. During the drive, he prepared the lie he planned to tell her. An emergency meeting had kept him at the office. His phone battery had died. A major client needed his full attention. If Nerissa questioned him, he would blame exhaustion. If she noticed the perfume, he would claim a coworker had hugged him. If she pushed harder, he would accuse her of becoming suspicious because of the pregnancy. He believed the plan would work. Nerissa had forgiven him before. She hated arguments. She valued their marriage. She always tried to protect the peace inside their home. Killian no longer saw those qualities as love. He saw them as weakness. He expected tears when he opened the front door. He expected questions, excuses, and another apology he did not mean. By evening, he believed everything would return to normal. He turned onto their quiet street and adjusted his expression in the rearview mirror. "Nerissa, you would not believe the night I've had," he rehearsed. He almost smiled. His lie sounded perfect. But as he reached their house, the words died in his throat. A long black limousine was parked outside. 2 suitcases stood beside the curb. Both belonged to Nerissa. Killian frowned as he stepped out of his car. The limousine looked completely out of place among the modest homes lining the street. A uniformed driver stood silently beside the open rear door, waiting as though every second had already been carefully planned. Then the front door opened. Nerissa walked outside. She wore a loose cream dress beneath a long coat, one hand resting gently over her growing stomach. Her face looked tired, but there were no tears, no anger, no desperation, only quiet resolve. Killian opened his mouth to call her name, but another figure appeared beside her. A tall man in a tailored charcoal suit, Cassian Thorne. Even from a distance, Killian recognized him instantly. His face appeared regularly in business magazines and television interviews. As the CEO of Thorne Global Holdings, Cassian represented the kind of success Killian had spent years chasing. Why was one of the country's wealthiest men standing outside his house? Before Killian could move, Cassian reached for Nerissa's suitcase and handed it to the driver. His movements were calm and respectful. He never touched her without permission. He simply opened the limousine door and waited. Nerissa slowly stepped inside, pulled away from the curb without urgency, leaving Killian frozen in the middle of the street. His carefully rehearsed lie no longer mattered. All he could think was one impossible question. Why had his pregnant wife left him? With a billionaire? Killian stood beside the road as the limousine disappeared. For a few seconds, shock kept him silent. Then anger rushed in. He convinced himself Cassian had taken advantage of Nerissa while she felt vulnerable. He told himself money had changed her. He told himself she had betrayed him. Those thoughts felt easier than facing the truth. No one had stolen Nerissa. Killian had pushed her away, one lie at a time. Every missed call had added distance. Every hidden message had weakened trust. Every late night had shown her where she stood in his life. The limousine had not ended their marriage. His choices had. Still, Killian refused to accept responsibility. He entered the house and searched every room as though Nerissa might still be there. Her side of the closet was nearly empty. The baby clothes were gone. Her toiletries had disappeared from the bathroom. On the bedside table, he found their wedding photograph. Beside it rested her ring. That small circle of gold struck him harder than any accusation. Nerissa had not left in anger. She had made a decision. Killian picked up the ring and stared at the smiling couple in the photograph. 6 years earlier, they had promised to build a life together. Now he stood alone, still carrying the scent of another woman. He believed the worst pain came from losing Nerissa to Cassian. He was wrong. The deepest pain would come later, when he learned why the billionaire had arrived and how long Nerissa had been preparing to leave. Before we continue, Welcome to Love Tales with Mr. Easton. If you enjoy heartfelt stories filled with love, betrayal, redemption, and meaningful life lessons, you're in the right place. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring you more unforgettable stories like this one. Now, back to Killian. Standing alone in the bedroom, he looked around as though the walls might explain what had happened. The silence felt unfamiliar. Nerissa had always filled the house with small signs of life, soft music while she cooked, a cup of tea waiting for him after work, baby name books scattered across the coffee table, little conversations about the future. That morning, every trace of warmth seemed to have disappeared with her. He reached for his phone and called. Once, twice, again. Every call went unanswered. Only hours earlier, Nerissa had desperately tried to reach him. Now their positions had completely reversed. His messages became shorter with each attempt. Where are you? Please, answer. We need to talk. By the final message, confidence had given way to panic. Who is Cassian Thorne, and why did you leave with him? Killian still believed the billionaire was the reason his marriage had collapsed. He had no idea that Cassian had entered their lives only after everything between him and Nerissa had already been broken. The truth began years before the limousine, before the affair, and before Killian ever believed success mattered more than the woman who stood beside him from the beginning. Years before that painful morning, Nerissa had shown kindness to an elderly stranger outside a small cafe. She believed he had no money, no family nearby, and no one willing to help. She stayed with him. She paid for his medication. She made sure he reached the hospital safely. She expected nothing in return. That stranger was Victor Thorne, the founder of one of the largest companies in the country and Cassian's grandfather. Before Victor died, he left Cassian one final request. Find the young woman who saved my life. Protect her if she ever stands alone. Cassian searched for Nerissa for years, but when he finally located her, she appeared happily married. He respected her life and stayed away. He returned only when her health, her unborn child, and her future were at risk. Killian knew none of this. He saw the limousine and assumed betrayal. He saw Cassian and assumed romance. He saw Nerissa leaving and called himself the victim. Yet one act of kindness had brought help to Nerissa at the moment she needed it most. One selfish decision had destroyed the trust Killian believed would last forever. One unforgettable sunrise had exposed the difference between a man who demanded loyalty and a man who lived with honor. To understand why Nerissa walked away without looking back, we must return to the years when she still believed Killian Mercer was the love of her life. Back when their home was small, their dreams were simple, and success had not yet changed the man she married. 6 years before the black limousine appeared outside their home, Killian Mercer measured success in quieter ways. A successful day meant finishing work early enough to meet Nerissa after her evening shift. A good week meant paying every bill without touching the small emergency fund they kept inside a kitchen drawer. A perfect night meant sharing a simple meal with the woman he loved while they talked about the future. Killian was ambitious, but wealth had not yet become the center of his life. He worked as a junior sales representative for a regional supply company, earning enough to survive, but never enough to feel secure. His suits came from discount stores. His shoes carried scratches near the toes. He traveled across town by bus because owning a car still felt like a distant goal. None of those things embarrassed him. He believed hard work would eventually change his circumstances. Nerissa believed in him, even when he returned from difficult days filled with rejection. She was still completing nursing school, balancing classes with long shifts at a neighborhood cafe. Her schedule left little time for rest, yet she rarely complained. She carried textbooks in a faded canvas bag and reviewed medical notes during quiet moments at work. Killian admired her discipline. Nerissa admired his determination. They had little money, but neither of them felt poor when they were together. On weekends, they walked through expensive neighborhoods and chose houses they hoped to own someday. Killian preferred modern buildings with wide windows. Narissa loved smaller homes with gardens and enough space for children to play. Their dreams often differed in detail, but they always included each other. Killian promised he would build a life where Narissa no longer needed to work late shifts. Narissa promised she would stand beside him while he worked toward his goals. Their love did not depend on expensive gifts. Killian brought her favorite bread from a small bakery when he had extra money. Narissa packed meals for his longest workdays. When one of them struggled, the other listened without judgment. At that stage of their lives, Killian understood something he would later forget. Being loved by a loyal person was already a form of success. Narissa never asked what he owned. She cared about how he treated people, how hard he worked, and whether his promises matched his actions. For Killian, she was not a reminder of an ordinary life. She was the reason he wanted to build a better one. Killian first noticed Narissa on a rainy Tuesday evening at the small cafe near Street Ann's Hospital. He had entered only to escape the weather. His coat was damp, his shoes were muddy, and he had spent most of the day visiting businesses that had rejected his sales proposals. He ordered the cheapest coffee on the menu and chose a table near the window. Narissa brought his drink. She wore a plain cafe uniform, with her dark hair tied back. A nursing textbook rested near the counter beside a stack of handwritten notes. Though the cafe was busy, she greeted every customer with patience. Killian noticed she remembered small details. She brought extra sugar to an elderly woman before being asked. She warmed a bottle for a tired father, holding a restless baby. When a student discovered he had forgotten his wallet, Narissa quietly paid for his sandwich and told him to return the money another day. Her kindness never appeared forced. When she returned to Killian's table, she noticed the untouched folder beside him. "Bad meeting?" she asked. "Several bad meetings," he replied. She glanced at the rain striking the window. "Then perhaps tomorrow owes you a better one." The comment made him smile for the first time that day. He stayed until closing. During the quieter moments, they spoke between her duties. Narissa explained that she attended nursing classes during the day and worked evenings to cover tuition, rent, and transportation. She slept only a few hours most nights. Killian asked whether the schedule exhausted her. "It does," she admitted, "but I know why I'm doing it." She wanted to care for people when they felt frightened, sick, or forgotten. She spoke without seeking praise. Her answer held a sense of purpose Killian rarely heard from people his age. Before leaving, he placed enough money on the table to cover the coffee and a small tip. The next evening, he returned. He told himself the cafe offered a quiet place to review his sales notes. Narissa knew better. She smiled when she saw him and poured his coffee before he reached the counter. Soon, his visits became part of both their routines. Killian arrived near the end of her shift. Narissa saved him a seat beside the window. Some nights they spoke for 10 minutes. Other nights they talked until the chairs were stacked and the lights were being switched off. Neither of them rushed what was growing. Their relationship began with coffee, patience, and the comfort of being heard. The weeks turned into months, and neither Killian nor Narissa could remember exactly when friendship became love. It happened naturally. Whenever Narissa finished her evening shift, Killian waited outside the cafe instead of letting her walk to the bus stop alone. Some nights, the streets were quiet. Other nights, heavy rain soaked the sidewalks, yet he never complained about waiting. "You don't have to keep doing this," Narissa told him one evening. "I know," Killian replied with a smile. "I want to." Those simple words stayed with her. Life remained difficult for both of them. Narissa spent her mornings in lectures, her afternoons studying at the hospital library, and her evenings serving customers until closing time. She often looked exhausted, but she refused to give up on her dream of becoming a nurse. Killian quietly became her greatest source of encouragement. On nights when she felt overwhelmed, he arrived carrying takeout from a small restaurant they both loved. They shared dinner on a park bench outside the hospital, while Narissa reviewed anatomy notes one final time before exams. Whenever she doubted herself, Killian reminded her how far she had already come. "You've survived every difficult day before this one," he would say. "You'll survive this one too." Narissa offered the same support in return. Every Friday, Killian visited different companies hoping to secure larger sales contracts. Rejection became a familiar part of his job. Some employers barely allowed him through the door before turning him away. After every disappointing week, Narissa listened without interrupting. She never told him to lower his ambitions. Instead, she helped him prepare for the next opportunity. They practiced interview questions together. She corrected his presentations, suggested better ways to explain his ideas, and celebrated even the smallest victories. Slowly, they stopped talking only about tomorrow. They began talking about years ahead. They dreamed about owning a home filled with laughter instead of worry. They imagined family dinners around a table they would buy together. They even joked about the names of children they hoped to meet someday. Neither of them possessed much money. What they shared instead was belief. Each sacrifice became easier because neither carried it alone. Without realizing it, Killian and Narissa were building something far stronger than financial security. They were building trust, one ordinary day at a time. 2 years after they first met, Killian asked Narissa to marry him. There was no luxury restaurant, no expensive vacation, and no crowd waiting to applaud. He chose the small city park where they often shared dinner after her evening shifts. The same wooden bench where they had celebrated exam results, comforted each other after disappointments, and planned a future they hoped to build together. As the sun disappeared behind the trees, Killian reached into his jacket pocket and removed a small velvet box. "I wish I could give you a bigger ring," he admitted. "I wish I could promise you a beautiful house today, instead of someday." Narissa smiled before he could continue. "I've never been waiting for those things." Killian looked into her eyes. "What have you been waiting for?" She reached for his hand. "You." His voice shook as he asked her to become his wife. She answered yes before he had even finished the question. 3 months later, they exchanged vows in a small church surrounded by a handful of relatives, close friends, and co-workers who had watched their relationship grow from the beginning. The reception took place in a modest community hall, decorated with fresh flowers arranged by Narissa's friends from nursing school. Everything about the wedding was simple. Everything about it felt genuine. After the ceremony, they moved into a small rented house on a quiet suburban street. The furniture came from second-hand shops. Their dining table had scratches across one side. The refrigerator made strange noises whenever it switched on. They laughed about every imperfection. On weekends, they painted the walls together, arguing playfully over colors, before settling on soft shades that made the little house feel warm and welcoming. Each month, they placed a small amount of money into a savings account labeled Our Future. Sometimes, the deposit was large. Most months, it wasn't. They celebrated every contribution anyway. Late one evening, while sitting on the living room floor surrounded by unopened boxes, Narissa leaned her head against Killian's shoulder. "No matter what happens," she whispered, "let's promise each other something." Killian squeezed her hand. "What is it?" "We face every season together. Good days, difficult days, success, disappointment, all of it." Without hesitation, Killian nodded. "I promise." At that moment, he believed those words would guide the rest of their lives. Neither of them imagined how difficult keeping that promise would eventually become. For the next few years, Killian worked harder than anyone in his department. He arrived early, stayed late, and accepted assignments others avoided. Each month, he studied the company's sales reports and searched for ways to improve his results. He believed one major opportunity would finally move him beyond the same position he had held for too long. Narissa stood beside him through every disappointment. When promotions went to men with stronger connections, she reminded him that one rejection did not erase his ability. When he considered leaving the company, she helped him compare other options instead of letting frustration control his decision. She also made sacrifices that Killian noticed at the time. Before an important presentation, his only suit tore near the sleeve. Buying another one would take most of the money they had saved for household repairs. Narissa used part of her nursing income to purchase a new suit without telling him first. Killian protested when he saw the receipt. "We need that money," he said. "You need this opportunity," she replied. "We'll replace the money later." The presentation became the strongest performance of his career. Killian proposed a new strategy for securing high-value clients the company had failed to reach. His managers listened carefully. For the first time, senior executives asked him questions instead of dismissing his ideas. A week later, his director called him into the office. The promotion included a larger salary, access to major clients, and invitations to private corporate events. It was everything Killian had chased since joining the company. He left the building with the letter in his hand and called Narissa before anyone else. She answered from the hospital break room. "I got it," he said, struggling to contain his excitement. For a moment, she was silent. "You got the promotion?" "I got it." Narissa laughed with relief and pride. That evening, they celebrated at home with takeout, sparkling juice, and the small chocolate cake she bought on her way back from work. Killian raised his glass. "This is the beginning," he said. "No more struggling, no more counting every coin. I'm going to give you the life you deserve." Narissa reached across the table and held his hand. "I already have the life I wanted," she told him. "I have you." Killian smiled, believing success would strengthen everything they had built. Neither of them knew it would soon test every promise they had made. Several months before Killian asked Narissa to marry him, she finished another long evening shift at the cafe near Street Anne's hospital. Rain had fallen for hours, covering the pavement with shallow pools and forcing most customers to hurry toward waiting cars. By closing time, the street was nearly empty. Narissa tied her coat, lifted her canvas bag, and stepped outside. She wanted nothing more than to return to her small apartment, remove her wet shoes, and study for the examination waiting for her the following morning. Before she reached the bus stop, she noticed an elderly man sitting near the cafe entrance. His gray coat was soaked. One hand pressed against the wall beside him while the other rested weakly across his chest. His breathing appeared uneven, and his eyes struggled to focus. Several people passed him. One man glanced over before continuing toward his car. A couple moved around him without stopping. Someone muttered that the elderly stranger was likely sleeping near the building because he had nowhere else to go. Narissa took 2 steps toward the bus stop, aware that the final bus would arrive soon. She stopped. Something about the man's posture troubled her. He was not resting. He was trying to remain upright. Narissa hurried back and crouched beside him. "Sir, can you hear me?" The man slowly turned his head, but his lips moved without forming a clear answer. Narissa placed 2 fingers against his wrist. His pulse felt weak and irregular. His skin was cold, despite the tension in his face. She removed her scarf and placed it around his shoulders. "My name is Narissa. I'm going to get you help." The man attempted to refuse, but his strength failed him. Narissa called emergency services and clearly described his condition. While waiting, she kept him awake by asking simple questions. She asked whether he knew his name, where he had come from, and whether anyone expected him home. His answers were incomplete. When the ambulance arrived, Narissa climbed inside with him. The driver warned her that she might miss the final bus. She looked at the frightened man on the stretcher. "That's fine," she replied. "He shouldn't go through this alone." As the ambulance doors closed, Narissa forgot about her examination, her tired feet, and the journey home. At that moment, one stranger's safety mattered more than her own comfort. At St. Anne's Hospital, the elderly man was taken into an emergency treatment room while Narissa waited outside in her damp cafe uniform. She had no connection to him, yet leaving felt wrong. A nurse eventually approached and explained that the man had suffered a serious medical episode. His condition had become dangerous because help had not reached him sooner. Narissa asked whether any family members had been contacted. The nurse shook her head. He carried no identification, and the information he managed to give was unclear. Hours passed. Narissa missed the final bus and knew she would need to walk part of the journey home. Her examination notes remained untouched inside her bag. She should have been studying, but every time she considered leaving, she remembered the fear in the man's eyes. Near midnight, a staff member explained that he would need medication after treatment. Some of the required cost was not immediately covered because the hospital still lacked his personal details. Narissa opened her purse. Inside were the savings she had set aside for transport, food, and part of her next tuition payment. The amount was small, but it was enough to cover the first supply. She paid without hesitation. The cashier asked whether she was related to the patient. "No," Nerissa answered. "Are you sure you want to do this?" "He needs the medication now." The decision meant cutting back on meals for several days. It meant walking more often instead of paying for transport. It also meant finding another way to complete her tuition payment before the deadline. She accepted every consequence. When the elderly man became stable, Nerissa was allowed to see him briefly. His face had regained some color, though exhaustion still marked every feature. She placed the medication receipt on the bedside table. "You're safe," she told him. "The doctor said you responded well." His eyes moved toward the receipt. "You paid for this?" Nerissa nodded. "Why?" She pulled a chair closer. "Because you needed help." He studied her as though searching for another answer. Most people he knew expected something in exchange for every favor. They measured relationships by influence, profit, or status. Nerissa had believed he possessed none of those things. Still, she had stayed. Still, she had paid. Before leaving, she wrote the cafe's telephone number on a small piece of paper. "If you need someone to contact the hospital for you, call there." She walked home through the wet streets with less money than before, yet without a single regret. The following afternoon, Nerissa returned to St. Anne's Hospital after her nursing examination. She was tired from studying through the night, but she wanted to check whether the elderly man had recovered enough to speak clearly. When she entered his room, he was sitting upright beside the window. His gray hair had been combed, and a clean hospital gown replaced the soaked clothes he had worn the night before. He looked stronger. His eyes brightened when he recognized her. "You came back," he said. Nerissa placed a small paper bag on the table beside him. "I brought you some fruit and a sandwich. The hospital meals are not always filling." The man looked from the food to her face. "You have already done enough. I wanted to make sure you were feeling better." He studied her quietly before offering his hand. "My name is Victor." "Nerissa Quinn." Victor repeated her name slowly, making sure he would remember it. He asked about her nursing uniform, her studies, and why she worked at the cafe. Nerissa explained that she covered most of her own expenses and hoped to graduate within the year. Victor noticed the tiredness beneath her smile. "You used your own money for my medication, didn't you?" Nerissa tried to dismiss the question. "It was only enough for the first supply. Money you needed for yourself. I will manage." Victor had spent most of his adult life surrounded by people who watched his decisions closely. Business partners praised him when they wanted access. Strangers changed their tone when they learned his name. Even distant relatives often appeared when they needed financial help. Nerissa knew none of that. She had seen an elderly man in distress and treated him with dignity. Victor asked whether she wanted reimbursement. Nerissa shook her head. "You do not owe me anything." "What if I am able to repay you? Then help someone else when they need it." Her answer left him silent. Nerissa checked the time and stood. "I have another shift soon." Victor reached toward the paper bag she had brought. "You came here before work after sitting an examination?" "I said I would check on you." As she prepared to leave, Victor thanked her again. Nerissa smiled. "Get some rest, Victor." He watched her walk through the doorway, deeply moved by the fact that she had offered care without asking who he was, what he owned, or what he might give her in return. Years passed before Victor Thorne spoke about Nerissa again. By then, his health had weakened, and the man who once led Thorne Global Holdings with tireless focus spent more time at home under medical care. His grandson, Cassian, visited him often. Cassian had inherited Victor's discipline, but he carried himself differently. He listened more than he spoke, rarely made promises he did not intend to keep, and treated his grandfather's words with deep respect. One quiet evening, Victor asked Cassian to sit beside him. "There is someone I need you to find," he said. Cassian expected the request to involve a former business partner or a family matter. Instead, Victor described the rainy night outside the cafe. He told Cassian about the young nursing student who had stopped when everyone else kept walking. He explained how she entered the ambulance with him, stayed at the hospital, paid for his medication, and returned the following day with food. She believed I had nothing, Victor said. That is what made her kindness honest. Cassian asked for her full name. Nerissa Quinn. Victor had tried locating her after his recovery. His staff contacted the cafe and the hospital, but Nerissa had left the cafe after completing nursing school. Her address had changed, and the records available to his team led nowhere. Victor never forgot her. He reached into the drawer beside his bed and removed a sealed envelope. "This is for you," he told Cassian. "Read it after I am gone." Cassian accepted it with hesitation. "What do you want me to do?" "Find her. And when I do?" Victor's expression grew serious. "Do not insult her kindness by treating it like a debt. She never asked for wealth. She never asked for recognition." Cassian waited for him to continue. "If she is happy, leave her in peace. If she is struggling but has support, respect her choices. But if you ever find her standing alone, make sure she has a safe place to turn." Cassian looked down at the envelope. "Why does this matter so much to you?" Victor's voice softened. "Because she reminded me that character has nothing to do with status. I spent my life building a company. She gave me something greater in one night. She gave me dignity when I looked helpless." Cassian promised he would search for her. Victor closed his eyes, satisfied. It was the final personal request he ever made of his grandson. After Victor's death, Cassian opened the sealed letter. His grandfather had written only a few pages, but every line carried the same request he had spoken aloud. Find Nerissa Quinn. Protect her dignity. Help only if she truly needs it. Cassian treated those words as a responsibility, not a suggestion. He assigned a private investigator to search old hospital files, employment records, and cafe documents. The work moved slowly. Nerissa had changed addresses after graduation. She had also stopped using Quinn as her surname after marrying Killian Mercer. Several leads ended with the wrong person. Others led nowhere. Years passed, yet Cassian refused to close the search. He kept Victor's letter inside a locked drawer in his office. Whenever progress slowed, he read it again and remembered the gratitude in his grandfather's voice. Eventually, an investigator located a nursing registration connected to Nerissa Mercer. Cassian reviewed the file himself. The woman in the photograph was older than the student Victor had described, but her eyes carried the same calm warmth. Records showed that she worked at a local medical center and lived in a modest suburban home with her husband. Cassian requested only enough information to confirm her well-being. He learned that Killian worked in corporate sales. The couple appeared financially stable. There were no public reports of legal trouble, medical crisis, or serious hardship. A photograph from a community event showed Nerissa beside Killian, smiling as he held one arm around her waist. Cassian closed the file. Victor had been clear. If she is happy, leave her in peace. Cassian chose not to visit her. He did not send money. He did not reveal Victor's identity or ask for gratitude. Instead, he instructed his investigator to stop all direct inquiries. He wanted no action that might disturb Nerissa's marriage or make her feel watched. Once each year, his office completed a quiet records check to confirm that she remained safe. For a long time, every report appeared ordinary. Cassian believed Nerissa had built the life she deserved. He felt relieved that Victor's request might never require more from him. What Cassian did not know was that appearances had started hiding painful truths. Inside the modest home shown in the records, Nerissa's marriage was changing. The woman who had once rescued a stranger without hesitation would soon need someone to honor the kindness she had nearly forgotten. Killian's promotion changed more than his salary. At first, the changes seemed harmless. He replaced his old work bag with an expensive leather case. He bought polished shoes, tailored suits, and a watch he once considered far beyond his budget. Nerissa felt proud when she saw him preparing for meetings with confidence. She believed his hard work had finally received recognition. Killian soon began attending private dinners, industry gatherings, and weekend events hosted in luxury hotels. He met executives who discussed property, investments, and influence as casually as other people discussed the weather. Their approval became important to him. He learned which brands they wore, where they ate, and how they spoke about people who earned less. He started copying their habits, hoping no one would notice how recently he had entered their circle. At home, Narissa remained the same woman who had supported him during every rejection. She still prepared his favorite meals. She still asked about his day. She still worked long nursing shifts while helping manage their home. Killian no longer saw those things with gratitude. He noticed her simple dresses instead. At a company dinner, Narissa wore a blue outfit she had saved for months to buy. Killian barely looked at her before suggesting she change. "What is wrong with this?" she asked. "It is too plain for the place we are going." Her smile faded. "I thought you liked it." "I did when we attended ordinary events." The words hurt more than he realized. Narissa changed without arguing. During the dinner, Killian spent most of the evening speaking with senior managers while she sat beside strangers who rarely included her in conversation. On the drive home, she asked whether he had enjoyed himself. "Yes," he replied. "You should make more effort at these events. People notice everything." Narissa turned toward the window. She remembered the man who once praised her kindness, her discipline, and her quiet strength. Now he seemed more concerned with whether she looked expensive enough beside him. Killian also started criticizing their home. The furniture looked old. The neighborhood felt unimpressive. Their car embarrassed him. Each complaint made Narissa feel as though the life they had built together had become something he wanted to hide. Success had not erased their past. Killian had simply begun treating it as a burden. Narissa learned she was pregnant on a quiet Monday morning. She sat alone in the bathroom, staring at the test in her hand, while tears filled her eyes. For months, she had worried about the distance growing between her and Killian. The news gave her hope that they might find their way back to each other. She planned the announcement with care. That evening, she prepared his favorite meal and placed a small gift box beside his plate. Inside rested the pregnancy test, wrapped beneath a folded note. "Our family is growing." Killian arrived home later than expected. He entered while speaking on the phone, barely acknowledging the meal before walking into the living room. Narissa waited until he ended the call. "I have something for you," she said. Killian loosened his tie and looked at the box. "Is this an early anniversary gift?" "Open it." He lifted the lid. For several seconds, he stared without speaking. Narissa searched his face, afraid she had chosen the wrong moment. "You are pregnant?" he finally asked. She nodded. A smile spread across his face. He stood quickly, pulled her into his arms, and laughed with surprise. "We are having a baby." Narissa held him tightly, allowing herself to believe the warmth between them had returned. For the next few weeks, Killian appeared transformed. He spoke about buying a larger home, creating a nursery, and giving their child opportunities neither of them had enjoyed. He placed his hand on Narissa's stomach each morning, even though there was no visible change yet. He searched for expensive baby furniture and sent her photographs of homes in wealthy neighborhoods. Narissa cared less about the house than the attention. They spent evenings discussing names. She preferred gentle names with meaning. Killian favored names that sounded important. Their differences felt playful rather than painful. One night, Narissa rested against him on the sofa. "I miss this," she admitted. Killian looked down at her. "Missed what?" "Us." He kissed the top of her head. "We are fine." Narissa wanted to believe him. She hoped the child would remind Killian of the promises they had made before ambition changed the atmosphere inside their home. For a brief period, hope returned. She did not know Killian's excitement was tied more closely to the image of fatherhood than the daily responsibility it required. Killian's interest faded as Narissa's pregnancy progressed. The first time he missed a medical appointment, he blamed an urgent client meeting. Narissa accepted the explanation and attended alone. The second time, he forgot completely. She sat in the waiting room surrounded by couples. Husbands held bags, asked questions, and watched the examination room doors with nervous smiles. Narissa kept glancing at her phone. No message came. When she returned home, Killian was working at the dining table. "You missed the appointment," she said. He looked up briefly. "I told you this month is busy. You said you would be there. I cannot leave an important meeting every time the doctor checks something." Nerissa stood in silence. It was the first scan where we could clearly see the baby. Killian sighed. You could have recorded it. His answer stayed with her long after the conversation ended. Home became a place Killian visited between professional obligations. He left early, returned late, and spent most evenings answering messages. When Nerissa tried discussing the nursery, he asked her to choose whatever she liked. When she spoke about names, he said there was still plenty of time. Her body grew tired. Some mornings, nausea made standing difficult. At night, pain in her back kept her awake. Killian complained when she moved too much in bed. Affection disappeared from their routine. He stopped reaching for her hand during walks. He rarely kissed her unless leaving for work. When she placed his palm over the baby's movement, he smiled for a moment before checking his phone. Nerissa began questioning herself. She wondered whether pregnancy had made her less appealing. She bought new clothes and tried to appear cheerful when Killian returned home. Nothing changed. One evening she prepared dinner and waited for 3 hours. The food grew cold while every call went unanswered. Killian arrived near midnight. Where were you? She asked. Working. You could have sent one message. I do not need permission to do my job. Nerissa lowered her voice. I am not asking for permission. I am asking you to remember you have a wife waiting for you. Killian walked past her. I cannot deal with this tonight. The bedroom door closed behind him. Nerissa remained beside the untouched table, realizing she had started feeling like an interruption in her own marriage. Killian met Bianca Holt at a private branding event hosted inside one of the city's most exclusive hotels. The guest list included executives, investors, consultants, and business owners. Everyone appeared eager to impress someone more influential. Killian enjoyed the attention his new position brought. He moved through the room with growing confidence, introducing himself to people whose names he once knew only from articles. Bianca approached him near the bar. She worked as a luxury consultant, advising wealthy clients on public image, private events, and personal branding. Her dress was elegant, her speech measured, and her attention focused entirely on him. I heard your presentation earlier, she said. You were the only person in that room who sounded prepared. Killian smiled. You were listening? I listen when someone has something worth saying. Her compliment reached the part of him that had grown hungry for praise. They spoke about the company, his promotion, and the difficulty of being surrounded by people who underestimated him. Bianca never challenged his version of events. When he complained about senior managers, she called them threatened. When he mentioned the sacrifices required for success, she told him exceptional men often felt misunderstood at home. Killian paused. What makes you think I feel misunderstood? Bianca lifted her glass. Men who are satisfied do not work as hard as you do. The answer flattered him. He mentioned Nerissa only briefly, describing her as supportive, but unable to understand the pressure of his new role. He did not say she had helped prepare the presentations that earned his promotion. He did not mention the suit she bought or the years she encouraged him. Bianca listened with sympathy. You need people around you who match your ambition, she said. Her words followed him home. Before leaving, she handed him her card. For professional reasons, she said with a knowing smile. Killian placed it inside his jacket. Later that night, Nerissa asked about the event. It was useful, he replied. Did you meet anyone interesting? A few consultants. He removed his jacket before she could notice the card. Nerissa smiled and returned to folding baby clothes. Killian watched her for a moment. Once, the sight would have filled him with tenderness. That night, his thoughts returned to Bianca's admiration and the way she had made him feel important without asking anything difficult from him. Bianca sent Killian a message 2 days after the event. She claimed she wanted his opinion on a client proposal. The conversation began with work, but the subject soon shifted. She asked about his goals. He described the position he wanted next, the house he hoped to own, and the social circle he believed he deserved. Bianca responded with constant encouragement. You are thinking too small. Your company is lucky to have you. You should be leading people, not answering to them. Killian began waiting for her messages. Their first lunch took place near his office. He told Nerissa he had a client meeting. Bianca chose an expensive restaurant where staff greeted her by name. She spoke confidently about influential people and invited Killian into conversations that made him feel closer to the life he wanted. Over the next several weeks, lunch became a regular habit. They talked about work at first. Later, Killian shared complaints about his marriage. He said Nerissa had become emotional. He said pregnancy had made home stressful. He said she no longer understood him. Bianca never asked whether Nerissa felt understood. She told Killian he deserved peace, attention, and admiration. She framed every selfish desire as a need he had neglected for too long. Killian began hiding their conversations. He changed Bianca's name in his phone to a company contact. He deleted messages before entering the house. He smiled at the screen, while Nerissa sat only a few feet away. One evening, Bianca called after Nerissa had fallen asleep. Killian stepped outside to answer. "I wish you were here," Bianca said. He looked through the window at his pregnant wife sleeping on the sofa with one hand beneath her stomach. He should have ended the call. Instead, he lowered his voice. "I have thought about it too." The silence between them carried a meaning neither needed to explain. Their conversations had crossed a line long before either admitted it. Killian told himself he had done nothing unforgivable yet. No kiss had taken place. No hotel room had been booked. Still, he was giving Bianca the honesty, attention, and emotional energy he had withdrawn from his wife. The betrayal had already begun. It started in secret messages, private complaints, and the decision to let another woman occupy the space Nerissa once held in his heart. The boundary Killian claimed he would never cross disappeared during a business trip 3 weeks later. Bianca traveled with several consultants to meet a potential client. Killian joined the same group because his company wanted him to lead the sales presentation. During the day, they behaved professionally. They sat on opposite sides of the conference table. They exchanged formal comments in front of colleagues. They avoided any gesture that might expose the private messages between them. After the meeting ended, the group gathered for dinner inside the hotel. Killian drank more than usual. Bianca sat beside him, praising his presentation and telling everyone he had carried the entire meeting. Her attention made him feel admired. When the others returned to their rooms, Bianca remained in the lobby with him. They spoke for another hour. Killian complained about Nerissa's questions, her pregnancy needs, and the responsibilities waiting at home. He left out every detail that might make him appear selfish. Bianca listened without challenging him. "You spend your life giving people what they need," she said. "When does anyone think about what you want?" Killian knew the answer should have been Nerissa. She had worked beside him before the promotion. She had supported him when his confidence failed. She was carrying their child while handling most responsibilities alone. Instead of defending her, he accepted Bianca's version of him. He told himself he had earned one night without pressure. When Bianca touched his hand, he did not move away. When she invited him upstairs, he followed. By morning, Killian had created several excuses inside his mind. He claimed the marriage had already become distant. He blamed Nerissa for making home feel tense. He argued that Bianca understood the person he was becoming. Most of all, he told himself one mistake did not erase his love for his wife. He returned home carrying guilt, but he refused to face it honestly. He kissed Nerissa's forehead, asked about the baby, and handed her a small gift from the hotel shop. The gesture looked thoughtful. Its real purpose was to ease his conscience. That night, he lay beside Nerissa while messaging Bianca beneath the blanket. He wanted Nerissa's loyalty, care, and family. He also wanted Bianca's attention and praise. Rather than choose, Killian decided he deserved both. The boundary Killian claimed he would never cross disappeared during a business trip 3 weeks later. Bianca traveled with several consultants to meet a potential client. Killian joined the same group because his company wanted him to lead the sales presentation. During the day, they behaved professionally. They sat on opposite sides of the conference table. They exchanged formal comments in front of colleagues. They avoided any gesture that might expose the private messages between them. After the meeting ended, the group gathered for dinner inside the hotel. Killian drank more than usual. Bianca sat beside him, praising his presentation and telling everyone he had carried the entire meeting. Her attention made him feel admired. When the others returned to their rooms, Bianca remained in the lobby with him. They spoke for another hour. Killian complained about Nerissa's questions, her pregnancy needs, and the responsibilities waiting at home. He left out every detail that might make him appear selfish. Bianca listened without challenging him. "You spend your life giving people what they need," she said. "When does anyone think about what you want?" Killian knew the answer should have been Nerissa. She had worked beside him before the promotion. She had supported him when his confidence failed. She was carrying their child while handling most responsibilities alone. Instead of defending her, he accepted Bianca's version of him. He told himself he had earned one night without pressure. When Bianca touched his hand, he did not move away. When she invited him upstairs, he followed. By morning, Killian had created several excuses inside his mind. He claimed the marriage had already become distant. He blamed Nerissa for making home feel tense. He argued that Bianca understood the person he was becoming. Most of all, he told himself one mistake did not erase his love for his wife. He returned home carrying guilt, but he refused to face it honestly. He kissed Nerissa's forehead, asked about the baby, and handed her a small gift from the hotel shop. The gesture looked thoughtful. Its real purpose was to ease his conscience. That night, he lay beside Nerissa while messaging Bianca beneath the blanket. He wanted Nerissa's loyalty, care, and family. He also wanted Bianca's attention and praise. Rather than choose, Killian decided he deserved both. Nerissa chose silence because she needed certainty. She knew Killian well enough to expect denial. If she confronted him without proof, he would dismiss her concerns, hide the evidence, and accuse her of damaging the marriage. She also feared making a decision during anger that would affect her child. So she began keeping records. She copied bank statements and stored them inside a locked folder at work. She wrote down the dates Killian stayed away overnight. She saved photographs of receipts found in his jacket pockets. One receipt listed dinner for two. Another showed a bracelet purchased 2 days before Killian told Nerissa they needed to reduce spending on the nursery. That discovery hurt more than she expected. She sat alone in the car outside the hospital, reading the amount again. The bracelet cost more than the crib she wanted for their baby. At home, Nerissa watched Killian closely. She noticed the way he smiled at messages from a contact saved under a company name. She heard him laugh softly during calls outside. She saw him turn cold the moment he entered the house. Still, a small part of her waited for him to confess. She gave him opportunities. One evening, she asked whether there was anything happening in his life that he needed to discuss. "No," he replied. Another night, she told him honesty mattered more to her than perfection. Killian barely looked away from his phone. "Why are you saying that?" "Because I want us to be able to speak openly." "We already do." His answer left her with nothing. Nerissa began sleeping poorly. She replayed conversations and questioned whether she had missed warning signs earlier. She wondered whether Killian had stopped loving her before Bianca entered his life. Even with proof growing around her, she did not want revenge. She wanted the man she married to choose truth without being forced. Each day he remained silent, gave her an answer she did not want. He was not protecting the marriage. He was protecting access to both lives. Nerissa continued documenting the financial damage because the missing savings affected her future and the baby's needs. She also began setting aside small amounts from her income. The money was not enough to leave. It was enough to remind her that she still had choices. For the first time, she considered a future where Killian was no longer beside her. Nerissa chose silence because she needed certainty. She knew Killian well enough to expect denial. If she confronted him without proof, he would dismiss her concerns, hide the evidence, and accuse her of damaging the marriage. She also feared making a decision during anger that would affect her child. So, she began keeping records. She copied bank statements and stored them inside a locked folder at work. She wrote down the dates Killian stayed away overnight. She saved photographs of receipts found in his jacket pockets. One receipt listed dinner for two. Another showed a bracelet purchased 2 days before Killian told Nerissa they needed to reduce spending on the nursery. That discovery hurt more than she expected. She sat alone in the car outside the hospital, reading the amount again. The bracelet cost more than the crib she wanted for their baby. At home, Nerissa watched Killian closely. She noticed the way he smiled at messages from a contact saved under a company name. She heard him laugh softly during calls outside. She saw him turn cold the moment he entered the house. Still, a small part of her waited for him to confess. She gave him opportunities. One evening, she asked whether there was anything happening in his life that he needed to discuss. No, he replied. Another night, she told him honesty mattered more to her than perfection. Killian barely looked away from his phone. Why are you saying that? Because I want us to be able to speak openly. We already do. His answer left her with nothing. Nerissa began sleeping poorly. She replayed conversations and questioned whether she had missed warning signs earlier. She wondered whether Killian had stopped loving her before Bianca entered his life. Even with proof growing around her, she did not want revenge. She wanted the man she married to choose truth without being forced. Each day he remained silent, gave her an answer she did not want. He was not protecting the marriage. He was protecting access to both lives. Nerissa continued documenting the financial damage because the missing savings affected her future and the baby's needs. She also began setting aside small amounts from her income. The money was not enough to leave. It was enough to remind her that she still had choices. For the first time, she considered a future where Killian was no longer beside her. Dr. Celeste opened a folder and removed a printed form. At the top were the words, Thorn Foundation Maternal Support Program. The program assisted expectant mothers facing financial pressure, unstable housing, serious emotional strain, or family crisis. It offered temporary accommodation, medical support, counseling, transport, and access to legal guidance. Nerissa read the first page. I do not qualify for something like this. Why do you think that? I have a job. I have a house. My husband earns a good salary. Celeste spoke gently. Your savings are disappearing. Your health is suffering. You do not feel secure inside your marriage. Support is not reserved for people who have lost everything. Nerissa placed the form on her lap. What happens if I apply? A review team looks at your needs. You decide which services you accept. No one forces you to leave your home or make a legal decision. Nerissa remained uncertain. Accepting help felt like admitting the marriage had reached a point she could no longer manage alone. She also worried Killian would find out. Celeste assured her that the application was confidential. You deserve room to think without fear, pressure, or financial control. Nerissa looked again at the form. She thought about the baby's empty savings account. She thought about cold dinners left untouched. She thought about Killian lying beside her while sending messages to another woman. What if I submit this and decide I am not ready? She asked. You still keep the right to choose. That answer mattered. For months, Nerissa had felt every choice slipping from her hands. Killian controlled most of the money, changed plans without warning, and treated her questions like accusations. The program offered no promise of an easy outcome. It offered options. Nerissa completed the form slowly. She listed her medical concerns, financial situation, and lack of nearby family support. When asked whether her partner knew about the application, she marked no. At the final section, she paused before signing. Celeste did not rush her. Nerissa placed the pen against the page and wrote her full married name. Nerissa Quinn Mercer. The application entered the foundation system later that afternoon. To Nerissa, it was one request among many. Inside Thorn Global's charitable division, her name carried a history no staff member understood. Within days, the file would reach Cassian Thorn. The woman his grandfather had asked him to find was no longer safe behind the appearance of a happy marriage. Nerissa's application moved through the Thorn Foundation like any other request at first. A case officer reviewed her medical notes, financial concerns, housing risks, and statement about growing instability at home. Nothing in the form suggested she expected special treatment. Her name changed everything. When the file reached Cassian Thorn's office, his assistant placed it among several urgent cases needing executive review. Cassian opened the document late in the afternoon. He read the name once. Nerissa Quinn Mercer. His attention sharpened. He opened the locked drawer beside his desk and removed Victor's letter. The paper had softened at the folds from years of careful handling. Find Nerissa Quinn. Protect her dignity. Help only if she truly needs it. Cassian compared the name with the application. The age matched. The nursing history matched. The location near street. Ann's matched. For years, he had believed the woman his grandfather spoke about was safe inside a stable marriage. The annual checks had shown no public trouble. This application revealed how little public records could show. Cassian read every page. Nerissa reported missing savings, emotional strain, poor sleep, and concern about her unborn child. She asked for temporary support, not money for luxury. She wanted medical stability and enough independence to make clear decisions. Cassian felt a weight settle inside him. Victor had warned him not to intrude into her life. He had also asked him never to ignore her if she stood alone. Cassian called the foundation director. Who has spoken with Mrs. Mercer? Only Dr. Rowan and the intake team. Has her husband been contacted? No, she requested confidentiality. Keep it that way. He instructed the staff to verify the facts through proper channels, without crossing personal boundaries. He wanted no private surveillance, no pressure, and no action that would expose Nerissa before she felt ready. He also requested a formal meeting through Dr. Celeste. Cassian refused to appear at Nerissa's home or workplace without warning. He did not want his wealth, name, or position to make her feel trapped. Before closing the file, he looked again at her signature. The woman who had helped Victor when no one else stopped had spent years unaware that her kindness was still remembered. Now her name had finally reached the person who had promised never to forget it. Dr. Celeste contacted Nerissa the following morning. She explained that a senior representative from the Thorne Foundation wanted to discuss her application in person. Nerissa agreed, though the request made her uneasy. She expected a social worker or medical coordinator. She did not expect Cassian Thorne. When she entered the private consultation room at Street Ann's, he was already there. He stood when she arrived and greeted her with a calm formality that eased some of her fear. Cassian wore a dark suit without any visible display of wealth. No reporters waited outside. No assistants filled the room. Only Dr. Celeste remained nearby. Nerissa recognized his face from business reports. "You are Cassian Thorne," she said. "Yes." "Why are you reviewing my case?" Cassian did not offer a polished answer. Instead, he placed a sealed copy of Victor's letter on the table. "My grandfather asked me to find you." Nerissa stared at him. "I never knew your grandfather. You knew him as Victor." The name pulled her back to the rainy evening outside the cafe. She remembered his soaked coat, weak voice, and the fear he tried to hide. She remembered the hospital room, the food she brought, and the way he asked why she had helped him. Cassian explained that Victor Thorne founded Thorne Global Holdings decades earlier. He told her how Victor spoke about the nursing student who stayed beside him when she believed he possessed nothing. Nerissa shook her head slowly. "He never told me. He did not want your kindness to change because of his name." Cassian described Victor's final request. If Nerissa had built a peaceful life, Cassian was to leave her alone. If she ever faced hardship without support, he was to help without turning her compassion into a debt. Nerissa looked at the letter, but did not touch it. "Why now?" "Because your application reached the foundation." "So, you have been searching for me?" "For years." The answer unsettled her. Cassian noticed. "I did not watch your private life. Once we confirmed you appeared settled, I stepped back. My grandfather made that boundary clear." Nerissa studied his face, searching for hidden motives. Cassian met her gaze without defensiveness. "I am here because Victor trusted your character. I intend to honor his wishes while respecting yours." For the first time since entering the room, Nerissa reached for the letter. Nerissa unfolded Victor's letter with unsteady hands. His handwriting was firm at the beginning and weaker near the final lines. He wrote about the night outside the cafe. He remembered her scarf around his shoulders, the concern in her voice, and the way she paid for his medication without asking what he owned. Victor admitted that his life had been filled with people who treated him differently once they learned his identity. Nerissa had offered care before knowing his surname. He called her kindness one of the most honest gifts he had ever received. By the time she reached the final paragraph, tears blurred the page. If Nerissa Quinn ever stands without support, help her find safety. Do not ask her to repay what she gave me. She has already given enough. Nerissa lowered the letter. I thought he was alone, she whispered. He was, Cassian replied. Not because he had no family, because none of us were there when he needed someone. Nerissa wiped her face. She struggled to connect the frail man from the hospital with the founder of a company whose name appeared on office towers, private hospitals, and financial reports. She had assumed Victor lived modestly. She had worried he might not afford medication. She had spent money she needed because she believed no one else would help him. The truth left her overwhelmed. I never expected anything from him. I know. I did not even know he remembered me. He spoke about you until his final days. Nerissa looked toward Dr. Celeste, needing something familiar in the room. So, this foundation exists because of him? Partly, Cassian said. He believed wealth carried responsibility. After his illness, he expanded several programs focused on medical access and emergency care. Nerissa pressed one hand over her stomach. The memory of Victor no longer felt like a forgotten event from her student years. His gratitude had survived. His promise had crossed time, wealth, and family. Still, one concern remained. Am I being helped because I saved your grandfather? Cassian answered carefully. You qualified for support before I saw your name. Victor's letter explains why I am personally making sure your dignity is protected. Nerissa breathed slowly. For months, she had felt invisible inside her marriage. Now she sat before a man who remembered an act she had barely considered important. The kindness she once gave freely had returned at the moment her own strength felt lowest. Cassian outlined the support available through the foundation. Nerissa would receive full medical monitoring for the rest of her pregnancy. The program would cover transport to appointments, counseling, and any treatment connected to stress-related complications. A furnished house owned by the foundation was available in a quiet area near Street. Ann's. She would also receive legal guidance regarding the missing savings, her marital rights, and access to joint property. Temporary financial support would remain available until she regained stability. Nerissa listened without interrupting. The offer sounded too large. What do you expect from me? She asked. Nothing. No interviews? No. No public statement about your family? No. No agreement to stay involved with the foundation? None. Cassian placed a folder before her. Every service is listed in writing. You choose what you accept. You also choose when to leave. Nerissa looked through the documents. The housing agreement gave her privacy. The legal support carried no repayment requirement. The medical care came through licensed professionals, not Cassian's personal staff. He had made every detail clear, so she would never feel controlled. I do not want to move from depending on my husband to depending on another man, she said. Cassian accepted the concern. You would not be depending on me. You would be using a support system designed for situations like yours. It is your foundation. It belongs to the people it serves. Nerissa looked down at the housing page. What if I choose to stay with Killian? That is your decision. What if I leave and later change my mind? That is also your decision. His answers carried no judgment. Cassian did not insult Killian or encourage immediate divorce. He did not describe himself as Nerissa's protector. He gave her information, options, and time. You do not have to decide today, he said. Nerissa thought about Dr. Celeste's warning. She thought about the baby's savings disappearing. She thought about the fear she felt each time Killian's car entered the driveway. I need somewhere safe, she admitted. Cassian nodded once. We will arrange it whenever you are ready. He stood to leave, but Nerissa called his name. Why did you come personally? Cassian looked back. Because my grandfather trusted me with your name. That answer stayed with her after he left. For the first time in months, help did not feel like another form of control. It felt like choice returning to her hands. That evening, Narissa returned home carrying the foundation folder inside her work bag. Killian was still at the office. The quiet gave her space to think. She placed Victor's letter in the bedroom drawer and sat near the window with one hand resting over her stomach. Part of her wanted to call Killian and ask him to come home early. She wanted to tell him everything. She wanted one honest conversation before making a final decision. Her phone rang before she made the call. Killian's name appeared on the screen. "I will be late tonight," he said. Narissa closed her eyes. "Another meeting?" "Yes, a client issue." "Will you come home afterward?" A brief pause followed. "I do not know. It might take all night." His tone sounded impatient, as though her question had interrupted something important. Narissa ended the call without arguing. Minutes later, an email notification appeared on the shared tablet they once used for household bills. Killian's account remained connected. The message confirmed a hotel reservation, 1 room, 2 guests. The booking had been made under Killian Mercer. A second attachment showed a dinner reservation at the hotel restaurant. Bianca Holt's name appeared under the guest note. Narissa stared at the screen. There was no unclear charge, no missing receipt, no explanation he might shape into another lie. The date was tonight. The hotel was across the city. Check-in began in less than an hour. Another message arrived from Bianca. "I am already here. Use the private entrance. I do not want anyone from your office seeing us together." Narissa read the line twice. Her breathing became shallow, but she did not cry. The pain felt different now. Earlier discoveries left room for doubt. This one did not. She opened the bedroom closet and looked at the empty space where their luggage was stored. The foundation folder waited inside her bag. Cassian's offer no longer felt like a distant option. It felt necessary. Killian had been given many chances to tell the truth. He had chosen another lie. Narissa picked up her phone and called the number Dr. Celeste had written on the housing agreement. A coordinator answered. "My name is Narissa Mercer," she said. "I need to know how soon the house will be ready." "Whenever you need it." Narissa looked toward the framed wedding photograph beside the bed. "Tomorrow morning," she replied. For the first time, her voice did not shake. Killian dressed for the evening as though nothing inside his home had changed. He chose a tailored black suit, polished his shoes, and fastened the expensive watch Narissa had bought after his promotion. While he stood before the bedroom mirror, she remained near the window, watching him prepare to leave. He did not notice the foundation folder hidden inside her work bag. He did not know she had read the hotel confirmation. He believed his secrets were still protected. "I might not return until morning," he said while adjusting his cuff. Narissa kept her voice steady. "What happened to the client?" Killian barely paused. "They're threatening to cancel the account. My team needs me there." "At a hotel?" His eyes moved toward her. "What did you say?" "I asked where the meeting was happening." Killian reached for his jacket. "Near the financial district. We may use the conference rooms at the Carlton." The same hotel named in the reservation. Narissa studied the man she had once trusted with every part of her life. He lied without lowering his eyes. His voice remained calm because dishonesty had become familiar to him. "Will Bianca be there?" she asked. Killian frowned. "Why do you keep mentioning her?" "You spend a lot of time working together. She is a consultant. Stop turning every professional relationship into a problem." Narissa rested one hand over her stomach. "I was asking a simple question." "No, you were accusing me." Killian stepped closer and lowered his voice. "I need you to control these suspicions. This stress is not good for the baby." The cruelty of his concern left her silent. He was using their unborn child to shield the betrayal harming them both. Before leaving, he kissed Narissa's forehead. The gesture carried no tenderness. It served as another piece of the performance he expected her to accept. "I will explain everything tomorrow," he said. Narissa looked directly at him. "Will you tell me the truth?" Killian gave a tired sigh. "You are being dramatic again." He walked toward the front door. His phone vibrated inside his pocket. A small smile touched his face before he hid it. Nerissa knew Bianca was waiting. Killian turned back once. "Get some rest. We will talk when I return." He believed tomorrow would bring another argument, another excuse, and another forgiveness. He had no idea Nerissa had already stopped waiting for his truth. When the door closed, she listened to his car leave the driveway. Only after the sound faded did she begin packing. Nerissa stood in the bedroom for several minutes before opening the closet. The house felt still, yet her thoughts moved quickly. She took out 2 suitcases. One held the clothes she needed for work and medical appointments. The other carried baby items, personal documents, and the few belongings she could not leave behind. She packed with care. Each folded dress brought back a memory. One had been worn during their first anniversary dinner. Another came from the small trip they took after she finished nursing school. She found Killian's old college sweatshirt beneath a stack of blankets. Years earlier, she wore it during cold evenings while they planned their future. She placed it back. Sentiment could not protect her child. Nerissa gathered medical records, bank statements, receipts, and copies of the evidence stored at work. She placed them inside the foundation folder. Next, she moved toward the nursery. The room was unfinished. A crib catalog rested on the floor beside unopened paint samples. Killian had promised they would complete the space together. Weeks passed without him returning to it. Nerissa packed the baby clothes alone. Tiny socks, soft blankets, the cream outfit she hoped Aurora would wear home from the hospital, though she had not yet chosen the name aloud. Her hands trembled when she lifted the first scan from the drawer. She pressed it against her chest. "I am choosing you," she whispered. The words strengthened her. For months, Nerissa had confused endurance with loyalty. She believed staying longer proved she valued her vows. She had ignored the cost of carrying every disappointment alone. Now the doctor's warning guided her decision. Her child needed a healthy mother. Her child needed a home where love did not depend on silence. Nerissa returned to the bedroom and removed her wedding ring. The pale line beneath it showed how long she had worn it without question. She placed the ring beside the framed image from their wedding day. In it, Killian looked at her with the devotion she had spent years searching for in his face. She did not know when that man disappeared. She only knew she could no longer risk herself, waiting for his return. Nerissa zipped both suitcases and placed her coat over the chair. She called the foundation coordinator. "I am ready," she said. The coordinator confirmed that transportation would arrive after sunrise. Nerissa sat beside her luggage through the remaining hours of darkness. She did not sleep. She watched the night pass and accepted that the marriage she once fought to save had already ended. Cassian received the call shortly before dawn. The foundation coordinator explained that Nerissa had requested transportation and wanted to leave before Killian returned. A driver had already been assigned. Cassian chose to accompany him. His staff questioned whether his presence was necessary. A senior coordinator could manage the move. Security could collect Nerissa without drawing attention. Cassian understood their concerns, but Victor's final request remained clear in his mind. Protect her dignity. He did not want Nerissa leaving her home in a van marked with the name of a support service. He did not want neighbors watching strangers carry her belongings away while forming their own conclusions. A private limousine offered comfort, privacy, and space for her luggage. Cassian instructed the driver to park near the curb and avoid blocking nearby homes. He asked another staff member to prepare the foundation house with food, clean bedding, medical supplies, and a direct number for Dr. Celeste. He made one point clear: no photographers, no company publicity, no public record linking Nerissa's situation to the Thorne family. When the limousine reached the suburban street, Cassian saw the small house Victor's investigator had once described as stable and peaceful. From the outside, nothing revealed the pain held inside it. Nerissa opened the door wearing a cream dress beneath a long coat. Her face looked exhausted, but her posture remained composed. Cassian stepped forward. "Good morning. Thank you for coming." "You do not need to thank me." He stayed near the walkway while the driver collected her suitcases. Cassian did not enter the house. He did not ask to see the bedroom or inspect what she had left behind. "This is your decision," he said quietly. "You are free to change any arrangement after you settle." Nerissa nodded. "I need distance before I decide anything else." "That is what the house will give you." Cassian opened the rear door but waited for her signal before moving closer. His restraint mattered to Nerissa. Killian had spent months controlling conversations, money, and information. Cassian offered help without claiming authority over her choices. A curtain shifted inside the neighboring home. An older woman stepped onto the porch, wearing a robe beneath her coat. "Mavis," Nerissa said softly. The neighbor looked from the suitcases to Cassian, understanding more than Nerissa wanted to explain. Cassian stepped away to give them privacy. This departure belonged to Nerissa. His role was to make sure she reached safety without losing another piece of herself. Mavis Doyle crossed the lawn with concern written across her face. She had lived next door since Killian and Nerissa moved into the neighborhood. Over the years, she shared garden tools, holiday meals, and quiet conversations across the fence. She also noticed the changes inside their home. Killian's car returned later each week. Nerissa stopped sitting outside in the evenings. Some nights, Mavis heard quiet crying through the open bedroom window. She never pressed for answers. That morning, the two suitcases explained enough. "You are leaving," Mavis said. Nerissa nodded. For a while, Mavis looked toward the house. "Does Killian know?" "No." "Are you safe?" "I will be." Mavis reached for her hands. "Is the baby all right?" "The doctor says I need rest. I cannot get it here." Her voice weakened on the final word. Mavis pulled Nerissa into a careful embrace. "You do not need to defend your decision to me." Nerissa closed her eyes. "I kept thinking things would improve. You gave him time. I wanted my child to have both parents." Mavis drew back and held her gaze. "A child needs peace more than a performance." Nerissa fought back tears. She had spent weeks fearing people would judge her for leaving. Mavis offered no judgment. "I feel like I failed," Nerissa admitted. "No, choosing safety is not failure." Mavis glanced at Cassian, who remained several steps away. "Is he someone you trust?" "He runs the foundation helping me." "Nothing else?" "Nothing else." Mavis accepted the answer. She knew Nerissa well enough to understand she was not leaving for another man. She was leaving because the husband inside the house had already left the marriage in every way that mattered. Mavis reached into her pocket and handed Nerissa a folded note. "My number is inside. Call at any hour." Nerissa smiled through her tears. "I already have your number. This one is written down in case you lose your phone or change it. Old women prepare for everything." The small joke gave Nerissa a moment of relief. Mavis placed one hand over Nerissa's stomach. "You take care of yourself and this little one." "I will." As Nerissa moved toward the limousine, Mavis called after her. "Do not look back because you feel guilty. Look forward because you finally chose peace." Nerissa stopped near the open door. She gave Mavis one final grateful smile before stepping closer to the future waiting beyond the curb. Killian returned shortly after sunrise. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes were heavy, and Bianca's perfume remained on his collar. During the drive, he rehearsed the explanation he expected Nerissa to accept. The meeting lasted longer than planned. His phone battery died. The hotel charge covered a conference room. He believed confidence would make every claim sound true. As he turned onto the street, he saw the limousine. His car slowed. A uniformed driver stood near the rear door. Cassian Thorne waited beside the curb. Mavis remained near the walkway. Nerissa stood between them with one hand over her stomach. Killian stopped in the middle of the road. For several seconds, his mind rejected what his eyes showed him. He pushed open the car door. "Nerissa!" She heard him. Her shoulders tightened, but she did not turn. Killian hurried forward. "What are you doing?" Cassian moved slightly, placing himself near enough to protect her space without blocking Killian's path. Killian recognized him. His anger rose faster than his confusion. "Why is Cassian Thorne outside my house?" Nerissa reached the open door. "Answer me!" Killian shouted. "Are you leaving with him?" Mavis stared at him with open disapproval. Killian ignored her. "Nerissa, whatever you think happened, I can explain." For months, those words had kept her waiting. This time, they carried no power. She stepped into the limousine. Killian moved closer. "You cannot leave our marriage like this." Nerissa finally looked at him through the open doorway. Her face held pain, but no uncertainty. "I did not leave it this morning, Killian." He froze. "You left it a long time ago." The driver placed the final suitcase inside. Killian looked toward Cassian. "What did you promise her?" Cassian's answer remained calm. "Safety." The word struck Killian because it required no wealth, charm, or status. It described the one thing he had failed to give his wife. Nerissa settled into the seat. Killian waited for her to cry, argue, or offer him another chance. She did none of those things. The door closed. The limousine pulled away. Killian stood beside the road, holding the keys to a house filled with evidence of everything he had lost. Through the rear window, Nerissa faced forward. She never looked back. Killian returned to the empty house, convinced he had been betrayed. The silence should have forced him to face his actions. Instead, he walked from room to room searching for proof that Cassian had influenced Nerissa. He opened drawers. He checked her side of the closet. He searched through old messages on their shared tablet. Every missing item made him angrier. By noon, he had created a story that protected his pride. Nerissa had planned everything in secret. Cassian had used his wealth to impress her. The foundation had given them a reason to meet. Killian refused to consider why his wife had called him 23 times while he stayed with Bianca. He ignored the wedding ring beside their photograph. He ignored the hotel reservation still connected to the tablet. He ignored the months of lies that had led to her departure. Killian called friends and explained the situation in a way that made him sound innocent. "My pregnant wife left with a billionaire," he told one colleague. He left out where he had spent the night. He told another friend that Nerissa had become distant after learning about Cassian's wealth. He never mentioned the missing savings or the gifts purchased for Bianca. Soon, he began posting vague messages online. Some people reveal who they are when money appears. Loyalty means nothing to the wrong person. Never sacrifice for someone who plans to replace you. Several friends offered sympathy because they knew only his version. Others remained silent. Orson Pike, his closest friend from work, came to the house that evening. He found Killian drinking alone in the living room. "She left me for him," Killian said. Orson placed his keys on the table. "Did you spend last night with Bianca?" Killian looked away. "That has nothing to do with this." "It has everything to do with this." Killian's face tightened. "I made a mistake. Nerissa ran away with another man." "You made more than one mistake." Orson pointed toward the ring near the photograph. "She did not leave because Cassian arrived. Cassian arrived because she had already decided to leave." Killian rejected the truth. He needed Nerissa to be guilty, because admitting his own responsibility meant accepting that no one had taken his family from him. He had driven them away, so he kept telling the story that hurt less. In his version, he was the abandoned husband. In reality, he had abandoned Nerissa long before the limousine came. Bianca moved into Killian's apartment less than 3 weeks after Nerissa filed for divorce. Killian had left the marital home because every room reminded him of what had happened. He rented a high-rise apartment near the business district, choosing a building far beyond what he could comfortably afford. The apartment had floor-to-ceiling windows, marble counters, private parking, and a rooftop lounge. Killian viewed the place as proof that he was still moving forward. Bianca saw it as the life she expected him to provide. She arrived with designer luggage, expensive shoes, and several boxes of clothing. Within days, her belongings filled the closets Nerissa had never entered. At first, Killian enjoyed the change. Bianca ordered meals from exclusive restaurants. She invited stylish friends over for drinks. She praised the view and posted carefully framed photographs without showing Killian's face. He believed her presence confirmed that he had chosen a better life. Bianca encouraged him to replace furniture that was already new. She wanted artwork, imported bedding, and membership at a private club. Whenever Killian questioned the cost, she reminded him of the future he had described. You said this promotion was only the beginning. It was. You said your income would keep growing. It will. Killian spoke with confidence, though his bank balance told a different story. The apartment deposit had consumed most of his personal savings. Divorce costs continued rising. He still owed money on gifts, hotel stays, dinners, and business expenses he had placed on credit cards. Bianca knew none of the full details. Killian hid overdue notices inside a desk drawer. He moved money between accounts and delayed several payments. He also continued pretending that work was going well. When Bianca asked why he seemed tense, he blamed Narissa's lawyers. She is trying to take everything, he said. Bianca believed him because the claim gave her someone else to blame. She never asked whether Narissa had received her share of the joint savings. She cared about keeping the life she had entered. Killian noticed the difference between Bianca and Narissa, but he refused to admit it. Narissa had helped him save. Bianca expected him to spend. Narissa had celebrated simple progress. Bianca treated every limit like a personal failure. Still, Killian kept paying. He believed losing Bianca would prove Narissa had been right about him. So he protected the illusion, even as the cost of maintaining it grew beyond his control. The company investigation began with a routine expense review. A finance officer noticed repeated charges connected to accounts Killian managed. Several payments lacked proper approval. Others appeared to cover personal meals, hotel bookings, transportation, and gifts. At first, the department expected simple mistakes. Killian had submitted personal charges as client expenses before. He usually corrected them after receiving a warning. This time, the pattern went much deeper. Investigators found money transferred through project accounts without clear authorization. Some payments had been assigned to clients who denied receiving the listed services. Killian had also promised discounts, premium access, and contract benefits he lacked the authority to offer. His goal had been simple. He wanted larger numbers. He wanted praise from executives. He wanted clients to see him as someone with influence. When approved budgets failed to cover the promises, Killian moved funds from other accounts and expected future sales to close the gaps. They never did. The finance director called him into a private meeting. Killian entered with the same confidence he once used at home. He claimed the charges were connected to client development. He said missing documentation had been delayed. He blamed junior employees for coding errors. The investigators presented hotel invoices, restaurant receipts, and luxury purchases. One receipt showed the bracelet he bought for Bianca. Another showed the room where their affair began. Killian's answers became less certain. He argued that some personal expenses had been mixed into business records by accident. The review team asked why those accidents had continued for months. He had no convincing reply. The company placed him on immediate suspension. His access badge stopped working before he left the building. Killian stood in the lobby staring at the card in his hand. Employees walked past him without meeting his eyes. News spread quickly. Several clients contacted senior management to report promises Killian had made without approval. One claimed Killian pressured him to sign a contract using false information about future benefits. Another produced emails showing Killian had altered terms after internal rejection. Orson called him that evening. "Tell them everything before this gets worse." Killian blamed Bianca. He blamed the finance team. He blamed the pressure of divorce. Orson ended the call with disappointment. "You still think every consequence belongs to someone else." For the first time, Killian felt the professional identity he had built slipping away. The promotion that once represented success had become the doorway to every choice he tried to hide. Bianca discovered the investigation before Killian told her. She opened the desk drawer while searching for a charger and found suspension documents, overdue statements, and copies of company expense reports. The numbers shocked her. The apartment was not proof of wealth. It was proof of debt. The dinners, gifts, trips, and private club fees had been paid through credit cards, joint savings, and questionable company expenses. Bianca understood the danger immediately. Her name appeared on hotel records. Several gifts were connected to expense claims. Emails between them included discussions about clients, private meetings, and payments Killian had promised to cover. She did not confront him at once. Instead, she protected herself. Bianca copied financial records from his laptop. She forwarded messages to a private email account. She photographed receipts, account statements, and documents connected to the investigation. She also contacted the company's legal department. Bianca described herself as an outside consultant who had recently learned Killian used business funds improperly. She offered records proving she had questioned several charges. The claim was misleading. She had enjoyed every benefit without asking where the money came from. Still, the company viewed her evidence as useful. When Killian returned home, he found her packing. "What are you doing?" Bianca closed one suitcase. "I am leaving." "Because of the investigation?" "Because you lied about everything." Killian laughed bitterly. "You knew I was married when this started." "That is different." "How?" "You told me your marriage was over. You knew Nerissa was pregnant." Bianca continued folding clothes. "I did not promise to become part of your financial disaster." Killian stared at the copied documents on the desk. "What did you take?" "What I needed." His face changed. "You spoke to the company." "I protected myself." "You exposed me. You created the evidence." Her answer sounded cold, yet it carried the same selfish logic Killian had used for months. He had justified betrayal because he wanted attention. Bianca justified betrayal because she wanted distance from his collapse. Killian stepped toward her. "I gave you everything." "No," she replied. "You gave me the life you wanted me to believe you had." She lifted her final bag. "You are not the man you claim to be." The words cut deeply, because Nerissa had once loved him before status mattered. Bianca had wanted only the image. When the image failed, she left without looking back. The company terminated Killian after completing its review. His dismissal letter cited misuse of funds, false promises to clients, policy violations, and conduct damaging to the company's reputation. Several professional contacts removed him from their networks. Invitations stopped. Calls went unanswered. People who once praised his ambition now spoke about him in guarded tones. The apartment became impossible to maintain. Killian sold his watch, furniture, and several suits to cover overdue payments. The landlord issued a final notice. His car was taken after he missed too many installments. Divorce proceedings continued. Nerissa's records proved money had been removed from their joint savings without her approval. The settlement required Killian to repay part of what he had spent. He also faced legal questions connected to the company accounts. Bianca disappeared from his life. Her number stopped working. Her social pages no longer showed photographs from the apartment. Within days, she began appearing at events beside another wealthy client. Killian watched from the small room he rented after leaving the high-rise. The room held one bed, a narrow table, and 2 packed boxes. No one waited for him after difficult meetings. No one brought him food. No one asked whether he had slept. He remembered the years when Nerissa had stood beside him through rejection. She had believed in his future before he owned anything worth admiring. He had traded that loyalty for praise from someone who left the moment his money disappeared. One evening, Killian called Nerissa. The call went unanswered. He tried again. No response. He opened their old message history and saw the 23 calls she had made on the night before leaving. For the first time, he understood what those unanswered calls had felt like. Fear, confusion, humiliation, the painful knowledge that the person you trusted had chosen silence. Killian sat on the edge of the bed with his phone in his hand. He had spent weeks claiming Nerissa abandoned him. Now he understood the difference. Nerissa left to protect herself and their child. Bianca left because he had nothing left to offer her. His company left because his choices made him unsafe to trust. His friends stepped away because he refused accountability. Killian had reached the loneliness he once forced Nerissa to carry inside their marriage. No limousine waited outside for him. No one came to restore what he had destroyed. For the first time, he had to face himself without another person available to blame. The foundation home stood on a quiet street, lined with old trees and low stone walls. It was smaller than Nerissa expected, There were no marble floors, private gates, or signs of Cassian's wealth. The house had warm wooden furniture, soft curtains, a clean kitchen, and a small garden behind it. The simplicity eased her. For the first few days, Nerissa moved through the rooms with caution. She kept her suitcase half-packed and placed important documents beside the bed. Part of her expected someone to tell her the help had limits or hidden conditions. No such demand came. A nurse visited each morning to check her blood pressure and review her meals. Dr. Celeste arranged frequent appointments, so every change in the pregnancy received close attention. A counselor named Amara Wells met with Nerissa twice each week. Their first sessions were difficult. Nerissa spoke carefully, choosing words that softened Killian's actions. She described his affair as a mistake. She called the missing money poor judgment. She blamed work pressure for the way he spoke to her. Amara listened, without correcting her too quickly. "Why do you keep protecting his image?" she asked during one session. Nerissa looked toward the window. "I loved him." "You still believe telling the truth about what happened means betraying the man you married?" Nerissa's eyes filled with tears. "He was not always like this." "I believe you." That answer gave Nerissa room to breathe. Amara never demanded anger. She helped Nerissa separate the man Killian once appeared to be from the choices he later made. Slowly, Nerissa stopped asking why she had not been enough. She began asking why she had accepted so little for so long. Her health improved with rest. She slept for several hours at a time. Her appetite returned. The headaches became less frequent. One morning, the nurse smiled after checking her readings. "Your blood pressure has come down." Nerissa touched her stomach. The baby moved beneath her palm. For weeks, every day had felt like a test she needed to survive. Inside the foundation home, healing arrived through ordinary care. A meal prepared on time, a quiet room, a doctor who listened, a counselor who never blamed her. Nerissa still carried pain, but she no longer carried it alone. Each peaceful day reminded her that leaving had not ended her life. It had protected the part of her still trying to begin again. Cassian kept his distance during Nerissa's first weeks at the house. He received updates only through the foundation team, and only information Nerissa had approved for release. He did not arrive without notice. He did not call late at night. He did not send expensive gifts meant to impress her. His restraint surprised Nerissa. She had expected the personal attention to continue after the meeting at the hospital. Instead, Cassian allowed the medical staff, counselor, and housing team to do their work. The first message he sent was brief. "I hope you are settling in. There is no need to reply. Please speak with the coordinator if you need anything." Nerissa read it twice. There was no question attached, no request for gratitude, no pressure to invite him into her recovery. She replied the following morning. "Thank you. The house is peaceful." Cassian answered once. "I am glad." He left the conversation there. A week later, Nerissa asked the coordinator whether Cassian always behaved with such distance. "He is trying to respect your space," the woman explained. "Most people with his level of influence expect access. He does not." The answer stayed with her. Killian often called control concern. He questioned where Nerissa went, how she spent money, and why she needed privacy. Yet, he guarded his own life from every question. Cassian behaved differently. He had the resources to learn almost anything about her, yet he waited for permission before receiving even basic updates. When Nerissa agreed to a visit, Cassian arrived carrying a paper bag from the small bakery near street. Anne's. Victor had once mentioned the place in his letter. "I was told you liked their bread," Cassian said. Nerissa smiled. "I used to buy it after evening shifts." I hoped the information was not outdated. They sat in the garden with tea. Cassian did not ask about the affair. He did not request details about the divorce. He asked whether the house felt comfortable and whether the medical team treated her well. When Nerissa mentioned waking from bad dreams, he did not offer empty reassurance. He listened. Before leaving, he stood near the garden gate. "You never need to welcome me because of my grandfather." "I know. I want to make sure you believe it." Nerissa looked at him. "I am starting to." Cassian nodded and left without trying to extend the visit. For the first time in years, Nerissa experienced support that did not demand access to every part of her. That respect became the first reason she trusted him. Their friendship grew through small moments rather than grand gestures. Cassian visited only when invited. Sometimes he stayed for tea in the garden. Other times he brought paperwork from the legal team and left after answering Nerissa's questions. He never arrived with flowers that cost more than her monthly salary. He brought practical things instead. A list of local parenting classes, a warm blanket from the foundation storehouse, a folder explaining every legal step in plain language. Nerissa began asking about Victor. Cassian told her his grandfather loved history books, old jazz records, and strong tea with too much honey. He described a man who built a large company, yet remained stubborn about receiving help. That sounds like him, Nerissa said. He tried to refuse the ambulance. He argued with doctors too. Nerissa laughed. The sound surprised her. Cassian smiled, but he did not point out how long it had been since she laughed so freely. Their conversation slowly moved beyond Victor. Cassian spoke about losing his parents at a young age and being raised mostly by his grandfather. He admitted the company often consumed more of his life than it should. Victor worried I would become too comfortable being needed, he said. What does that mean? He believed some people hide from loneliness by making themselves important. Nerissa considered the honesty in his answer. Killian had spoken about himself as though ambition excused every absence. Cassian held more responsibility than Killian ever had, yet he did not use it to avoid accountability. Nerissa also spoke more openly. She told Cassian about nursing school, long cafe shifts, and the early years of her marriage. She did not hide that Killian once made her happy. Cassian never treated those memories as competition. You loved the person you believed he was, he said. I keep wondering whether I missed who he became. You noticed. You hoped he would choose differently. The distinction brought her comfort. Their friendship deepened through trust. Cassian never tried to become the answer to every problem. When Nerissa needed legal advice, he called the lawyer. When she needed medical reassurance, he directed her to Dr. Celeste. He did not make himself essential. That made his presence feel safe. One afternoon, Nerissa struggled to carry several grocery bags from the coordinator's car. Cassian took 2 bags without comment and followed her into the kitchen. No speech, no display, only help. Nerissa realized kindness felt strongest when it came without performance. Nerissa invited Cassian to a medical appointment during the final weeks of her pregnancy. The invitation surprised them both. Dr. Celeste had scheduled a detailed examination after Nerissa reported a change in the baby's movement. The doctor did not expect trouble, yet Nerissa felt anxious. Mavis had planned to attend, but woke with a fever. The coordinator offered to come. Nerissa hesitated before asking Cassian. You do not need to say yes, she told him over the phone. I would be honored to go. He arrived early and waited in the hospital lobby. During the drive, Cassian kept the conversation light. He spoke about Victor's habit of buying books faster than he read them. Nerissa smiled, though her hands remained clasped tightly in her lap. At the clinic, several expectant couples filled the waiting area. The sight stirred an old ache. She remembered every appointment Killian had missed. Cassian noticed her expression. We could wait somewhere quieter. No, I am all right. He did not tell her how she should feel. He sat beside her. Inside the examination room, Dr. Celeste welcomed them and began the check. Nerissa watched the monitor, searching the moving image for reassurance. Cassian remained near the wall until she reached for his hand. He stepped closer. The room filled with the rapid sound of the baby's heartbeat. Strong, steady, alive. Nerissa released a breath she had been holding for days. Tears slipped down her face. Cassian tightened his hand around hers, careful and calm. Dr. Celeste smiled. Everything looks healthy. Nerissa laughed softly through her tears. Cassian looked toward the screen. He did not speak for several seconds. The sound touched something deep inside him. Victor had asked him to protect Nerissa if she ever stood alone. Yet she was no longer only the woman from his grandfather's story. She had become someone he admired for her own courage. After the appointment, Cassian walked with her toward the car. "Thank you for coming," Nerissa said. "Thank you for trusting me enough to ask." The answer mattered. He did not act as though his presence had rescued her from fear. He understood the invitation itself was a gift. That evening, Nerissa remembered the moment she reached for his hand. The gesture had not come from dependence. It came from trust. For the first time since leaving Killian, she allowed herself to believe someone new might stand beside her without taking control. Peace entered Nerissa's life so gently that she almost failed to recognize it. There were no dramatic promises, no speeches about forever, no demand that she forget what had happened. Peace looked like waking after a full night of sleep. It sounded like birds outside the bedroom window, instead of Killian's car arriving near dawn. It felt like checking the bank account without fearing another unexplained withdrawal. For months, Nerissa had believed safety meant avoiding open conflict. She kept her voice calm, accepted weak explanations, and ignored her own discomfort because she wanted to preserve the marriage. Now she understood the difference. Silence did not always mean peace. Sometimes silence meant fear had taken up too much space. At the foundation home, she spoke without measuring every sentence. She asked questions without receiving anger. She said no without preparing for punishment. Her body responded to the change. The tension in her shoulders eased. Her appetite became steady. Dr. Celeste reported healthy progress in the pregnancy. One evening, Nerissa sat alone in the garden while the sun lowered behind the trees. A tray rested beside her with tea and sliced fruit. The baby moved. Nerissa placed both hands over her stomach. "I am sorry it took me so long," she whispered. She was not apologizing for leaving. She was apologizing for the months she spent believing survival was the best life she deserved. Cassian arrived at the gate carrying a folder from the legal team. He paused when he saw her sitting quietly. "I could come back tomorrow." Nerissa shook her head. "You are not disturbing me." He joined her at the garden table. For several minutes, neither spoke. The silence felt easy. Nerissa noticed the difference immediately. With Killian, silence had become a warning. With Cassian, it offered rest. She looked toward the house. "I used to think peace meant keeping everyone happy." Cassian waited. "Now I think peace means being able to remain honest without feeling afraid." "That sounds right." Nerissa smiled. She did not know what the future held. The divorce was not final. The baby had not arrived. Her trust still required time. Yet she no longer felt trapped between fear and hope. She had space to choose, space to recover, space to become herself again. Nerissa had survived the marriage. Inside the quiet garden, she began learning how to live beyond it. Nerissa went into labor before sunrise 3 weeks later. The first pain woke her from sleep. At first, she believed it was another false alarm. She sat on the edge of the bed, breathing slowly while one hand rested over her stomach. A second contraction followed. This one was stronger. Nerissa reached for her phone and called Dr. Celeste. Within minutes, the foundation driver was on the way. Mavis arrived wearing a coat over her nightclothes, carrying the small hospital bag Nerissa had prepared days earlier. Cassian received the news through the coordinator. He came to the hospital but remained in the waiting area. He understood that Nerissa needed familiar medical care and trusted women beside her, not another person filling the room with concern. Labor lasted several hours. Dr. Celeste guided Nerissa through each stage, reminding her to breathe and conserve her strength. Mavis stayed near her shoulder, speaking calmly whenever fear appeared in Nerissa's eyes. Nerissa endured every painful wave with one thought. Her daughter was almost here. When the first cry filled the delivery room, Nerissa's exhaustion gave way to overwhelming relief. Dr. Celeste placed the baby against her chest. She was small, healthy, and warm. Nerissa looked at her daughter's face and began to cry. "Hello, Aurora," she whispered. She had chosen the name because it meant the arrival of light after darkness. Aurora's tiny fingers closed around Nerissa's thumb. At that moment, the failed marriage no longer felt like the end of her future. The fear, sleepless nights, and painful decisions had led her to this child resting safely against her. Mavis wiped tears from her cheeks. She is beautiful. Nerissa kissed Aurora's forehead. She is everything. Outside the room, Cassian waited without asking for updates beyond confirmation that mother and baby were safe. When Dr. Celeste finally stepped into the hallway, she smiled. They are both doing well. Cassian lowered his head with relief. He did not ask to enter. He waited until Nerissa sent word that she wanted to see him. Inside the hospital room, she held Aurora close while morning light entered through the window. For the first time in months, Nerissa did not feel as though she was escaping an old life. She felt as though she had entered a new one. Cassian entered the room carrying a small parcel wrapped in plain brown paper. There were no flowers filling the hallway, no expensive jewelry, no luxury basket prepared by an assistant. He approached the bed quietly and stopped a respectful distance away. Nerissa smiled. You waited a long time. I wanted you to rest. She looked down at Aurora. Would you like to meet her? Cassian stepped closer. Aurora slept against Nerissa's chest, wrapped in a soft white blanket. Cassian's expression changed when he saw her. She is perfect. Nerissa laughed softly. She has already made it clear she dislikes being cold. That sounds like good judgment. Cassian placed the parcel on the bedside table. This belonged to Victor. Nerissa looked at him with surprise. Inside the paper was a worn children's storybook with a faded blue cover. The corners had softened with age, and several pages carried small marks from years of use. My grandfather read this to me when I was young, Cassian explained. His mother read it to him before that. Nerissa opened the cover. Victor's handwriting appeared across the first page. Kindness given freely never disappears. It travels through lives we may never meet. Nerissa read the sentence twice. Cassian pointed toward a second message beneath it. Victor had added Nerissa's name years earlier. For the young woman who reminded me that compassion still exists. Nerissa covered her mouth as tears filled her eyes. He planned to give this to me? He hoped I would find you. I believe he would want Aurora to have it now. Nerissa ran her fingers carefully over the writing. The book carried greater meaning than anything money might have purchased. It connected Aurora to the man whose final request brought safety into their lives. Thank you, she whispered. Cassian shook his head. This is from him. Nerissa looked toward the empty chair beside the bed. You may sit. Cassian took the seat. For several minutes, they spoke quietly while Aurora slept. Cassian did not reach for the baby until Nerissa offered. When she placed Aurora in his arms, he held her with careful uncertainty. Aurora opened her eyes briefly before settling again. Nerissa watched them together. The moment held no promise of romance and no attempt to replace anyone. It held trust. Cassian had brought no display of wealth. He had brought a family memory, preserved for the child whose mother once saved Victor's life. The divorce proceedings resumed several weeks after Aurora's birth. Nerissa attended with her attorney while Cassian remained absent. He had made it clear that the case belonged to Nerissa and Killian. His foundation provided legal assistance, but he refused to turn the hearing into a display of his influence. Killian entered the conference room looking thinner than before. His expensive suits were gone. He wore a plain jacket that no longer fitted him well. The confidence he once carried had weakened under the weight of unemployment, debt, and public embarrassment. He still expected the proceedings to prove Cassian had interfered in his marriage. His attorney requested details about the foundation's involvement. He argued that Nerissa's sudden access to housing, legal help, and private transportation suggested a personal relationship with Cassian. Nerissa's attorney answered with documents. The first file contained her medical records. They showed elevated blood pressure, poor sleep, weight loss, and Dr. Celeste's concerns about prolonged stress. The second file contained the foundation application Nerissa completed before meeting Cassian. The third contained the housing agreement, financial assistance terms, and strict privacy rules applied to every approved participant. Killian read the dates. Nerissa had requested help before the limousine arrived, before she left the ring behind, before he returned from the hotel. His attorney opened another document. It was a copy of Victor Thorne's letter. Killian's face changed as he read. The letter described the rainy night, Narissa's decision to stay with Victor, and the medication she purchased from her own limited savings. It also contained Victor's request to Cassian: find her, respect her life, help only if she stands without support. Killian looked toward Narissa. You knew his grandfather? I knew an elderly man named Victor. You never told me. I did tell you about him years ago. You said I was too trusting. The memory returned slowly. Narissa had once spoken about missing an examination review because she stayed at the hospital with a stranger. Killian had laughed and told her she needed to stop carrying everyone's problems. He had forgotten the story. Victor had remembered every detail. The legal timeline showed Cassian had not contacted Narissa until her application reached the foundation. There had been no secret courtship, no hidden arrangement, no billionaire waiting for a chance to take another man's wife. Cassian entered only after Killian's choices placed Narissa and Aurora at risk. Killian remained seated after the meeting ended. His attorney gathered the files and advised him to accept the proposed settlement. The evidence gave him little room to challenge Narissa's account. Still, Killian stared at Victor's letter. The words forced him to view the morning of the limousine from another position. Cassian had not arrived as a rival. He arrived because Narissa needed safe transportation. The foundation house was not a secret home prepared for lovers. It was temporary accommodation offered through a maternal support program. The medical appointments, counseling, and legal aid were documented services. Even Cassian's personal involvement came from a promise made before Narissa married Killian. Killian thought about his online posts accusing her of chasing money. She had accepted support only after resisting it. He remembered telling friends that she planned to replace him with a wealthy man. Cassian had respected her marriage for years and approached her only through Dr. Celeste. Killian remembered shouting from the street as Narissa entered the limousine. He had demanded an explanation while carrying another woman's perfume on his clothes. The humiliation he once blamed on Narissa now belonged entirely to him. He had accused her of the betrayal he committed. He had called himself abandoned after leaving her emotionally alone for months. He had treated Cassian's respect as manipulation because he no longer recognized what respectful behavior looked like. Outside the building, Killian found Orson waiting near the entrance. Orson had come to deliver documents connected to the company investigation. Killian held up the copy of Victor's letter. There was nothing between them. Orson's expression remained calm. I told you that. I thought Cassian wanted her. Perhaps he cares for her now. That does not change why she left. Killian looked toward the road. She would still be with me if he had not appeared. No, Orson replied. She would have left in another car. The answer removed Killian's final excuse. Cassian's wealth had not destroyed the marriage. Bianca had not forced him to lie. The company had not forced him to misuse funds. Narissa's pregnancy had not made him distant. Each decision belonged to him. Killian lowered the letter. For the first time, regret did not come from losing his home, job, or reputation. It came from understanding that Narissa had remained loyal until staying became harmful. She had not chosen Cassian over him. She had chosen safety after Killian repeatedly chose himself. Killian asked to speak with Narissa before the next legal meeting. Her attorney offered to remain inside the room. Narissa agreed, but asked him to wait near the door. She no longer feared Killian's anger. She also refused to meet him without support nearby. Killian entered slowly. For several seconds, he said nothing. Narissa sat across from him, calm and composed. Motherhood had brought tiredness to her face, but her eyes looked clearer than they had during the final months of their marriage. How is Aurora? He asked. She is healthy. I would like to see her. That discussion will happen through our attorneys. Killian nodded. He had expected the boundary, yet hearing it still hurt. I read Victor's letter. Narissa waited. I know there was nothing between you and Cassian. There was never anything to hide. I accused you because I did not want to admit why you left. His voice weakened. I blamed him. I blamed Bianca. I blamed work. I blamed the pressure I felt. I blamed you for asking questions. Narissa listened, without rescuing him from the discomfort. Killian looked down at his hands. You called me 23 times that night. Yes, I saw them. You chose not to answer. I know. Silence followed. Killian struggled to continue. I am sorry for the affair. I am sorry for the money. I am sorry for making you feel unwanted while you carried our child. Nerissa's expression remained steady, though emotion moved through her eyes. I kept believing I had time to fix everything. I thought you would always be there when I decided to change. That was part of the problem, she said. You treated my loyalty like a guarantee. Killian nodded as tears gathered in his eyes. Is there any chance for us? Nerissa looked at the man she once loved. She remembered the cafe, the park bench, their wedding vows, and the years when he stood beside her with sincerity. She also remembered the lies, cold nights, missing savings, and fear that harmed her health. I forgive you, she said. Hope rose across his face. Nerissa continued before he could speak. Forgiveness does not mean I am returning. His hope disappeared. I release the anger because I do not want to carry it into Aurora's life, but I will not rebuild a marriage that taught me to disappear. Killian lowered his head. He had asked for another chance. Nerissa gave him something different. The truth, spoken without cruelty. Some damage could receive forgiveness. It could not always receive restoration. Nerissa's forgiveness gave Killian no doorway back into her life. It gave him truth. Their final conversation ended without shouting, blame, or promises neither of them believed. Nerissa left the room with peace in her heart, while Killian remained seated with the weight of everything he had lost. For weeks, he had mistaken forgiveness for an invitation. He believed remorse might restore the home, trust, and family he had damaged. Nerissa made the difference clear. She no longer wanted revenge. She no longer wanted to spend her days carrying anger. But she also refused to return to a marriage where love had required silence, patience had been mistaken for weakness, and loyalty had been rewarded with betrayal. The divorce became final several weeks later. Nerissa signed the papers calmly. Her attorney reviewed the settlement, including repayment of missing savings and clear arrangements concerning Aurora's future care. Killian agreed to every term. He no longer had the strength to fight for control over a life he had failed to protect. When Nerissa left the legal office, Cassian waited across the street near his car. He had offered to drive her home, but remained outside during the proceedings. He never entered the building. He never treated the divorce as a victory. When Nerissa approached, he opened the passenger door. How do you feel? He asked. Sad, she admitted. Relieved, too. Both feelings make sense. She looked back at the building. I once believed ending the marriage meant every good memory had been false. Cassian listened. Now I understand the early years were real. The ending was real too. One does not erase the other. That sounds honest. Nerissa nodded. She had loved Killian sincerely. She had also learned that love could not survive without trust, care, and responsibility. Forgiving him allowed her to stop living inside the injury. Leaving him allowed her to protect the person she had become. That evening, Nerissa held Aurora near the bedroom window while the child slept against her shoulder. She thought about the woman she had been months earlier, waiting beside cold meals and unanswered calls. She no longer recognized that fear as home. Her life had changed, not because another man arrived to save her, because she finally accepted she deserved more than survival. Forgiveness closed the chapter. Self-respect kept it closed. Cassian never rushed what grew between them. After the divorce, he continued visiting the foundation home with the same patience he had shown from the beginning. He brought meals when Nerissa returned from nursing shifts, too tired to cook. He carried Aurora's stroller down the front steps. He read bedtime stories in a quiet voice, while Nerissa prepared bottles in the kitchen. None of his actions came with expectations. He never reminded Nerissa of the help his family provided. He never suggested gratitude should become affection. Their relationship developed through honesty. Cassian told her when work demanded his attention. If he promised to visit, he arrived on time. If a meeting delayed him, he called before she began waiting. Those simple habits mattered more to Nerissa than grand declarations. She had spent too long questioning where Killian was, why he had not called, and whether every explanation contained another lie. With Cassian, she did not need to search for hidden meanings. One evening, they sat in the garden after Aurora fell asleep inside. Nerissa spoke about her fear of trusting too quickly. "I do not want pain to make me suspicious of everyone," she said. "I also do not want hope to make me careless." Cassian rested his hands on the table. "You are allowed to take your time. What if it takes longer than you expect?" "I have no deadline." His answer brought quiet relief. Cassian also shared his own concerns. He admitted that wealth often made relationships difficult. People approached him for access, influence, and comfort. Others assumed he could solve every problem because he controlled large resources. "I do not want money to become the reason you trust me," he said. "It is not." "What is?" Nerissa considered the question. "You listen when I say no." Cassian lowered his eyes briefly, moved by the simplicity of her answer. Their first kiss came months later. Aurora slept nearby, while soft rain touched the garden roof. Cassian lifted one hand toward Nerissa's face, but stopped before touching her. She understood the question in his eyes. Nerissa moved closer. The kiss was gentle and unhurried. No promises followed. No pressure entered the moment. She kissed him because she felt safe, valued, and free to choose. For the first time in years, affection did not feel like something she needed to earn. It felt mutual. 1 year after Nerissa left the suburban house, Cassian invited her into the foundation garden at sunset. She expected a quiet dinner. A small table stood beneath the trees with 2 cups of tea and a plate of bread from the bakery near street. Anne's. Aurora rested in a stroller beside the bench, watching the leaves move above her. The setting carried memories of every stage of Nerissa's healing. She had cried in that garden. She had laughed there for the first time after leaving. She had spoken openly about fear, trust, motherhood, and the future. Cassian stood beside the same table where many of those conversations happened. Nerissa noticed the small box in his hand. Her breath caught. Cassian did not kneel immediately. He looked at her with a seriousness that made the moment feel private, despite the importance it carried. "I need to say something before I ask you anything." Nerissa waited. "When I first came to your home, I believed I was keeping a promise to my grandfather." He glanced toward Aurora. "I thought my role was to help you reach safety." His gaze returned to Nerissa. "But you were already choosing safety before I arrived. You made the call. You packed the bags. You walked away. You protected your daughter." Nerissa's eyes filled with tears. Cassian stepped closer. "I did not rescue you. You rescued yourself." He opened the box. Inside rested a simple ring with a small blue stone. No large diamond. No public display. No symbol meant to prove his wealth. "I do not want to replace your past," he said. "I want to build an honest future beside you." He lowered himself onto one knee. "Nerissa Quinn, will you marry me?" She looked toward Aurora. The child gave a soft sound from the stroller and reached one hand into the air. Nerissa laughed through her tears. She remembered the last time she accepted a proposal. She had believed love alone would carry a marriage through every season. Now she understood marriage needed daily honesty, respect, responsibility, and care. Cassian had shown each one without demanding praise. "Yes," she whispered. His expression softened. "Yes?" "Yes, Cassian." He placed the ring on her finger and stood. Nerissa wrapped her arms around him. Cassian held her carefully, as though the answer was a gift rather than something owed. Aurora began laughing from the stroller. Cassian lifted her into his arms. Nerissa stood beside them, no longer fleeing an old life. She was choosing a new one. The wedding took place several months later, in the same garden. Nerissa and Cassian rejected a large public ceremony. There were no reporters, corporate guests, or business partners invited for appearance. Only people who had walked beside them through hardship gathered beneath the trees. Mavis sat in the front row, wearing a pale lavender dress and holding a handkerchief she claimed she would not need. Dr. Celeste arrived with several nurses from street. Anne's, Amara, Nerissa's counselor, stood near the garden path with a proud smile. Orson attended quietly. He had ended his friendship with Killian after refusing to support the lies and blame that followed Nerissa's departure. Aurora wore a cream dress and soft blue shoes. She walked between Nerissa and Cassian, holding one finger from each of them while the guests smiled. Nerissa's dress was simple and elegant. Cassian wore a dark suit without any sign of the public figure seen in magazines. That day, he was not the head of Thorn Global. He was the man promising to love Nerissa with honesty. Their vows were brief. Cassian promised to listen, remain truthful, and never mistake care for control. Nerissa promised to speak openly, protect the peace they built, and never hide her needs to keep anyone comfortable. When they exchanged rings, Aurora clapped before anyone else. Laughter moved through the garden. Outside the property, Killian sat in a parked car. A former colleague had mentioned the wedding. He told himself he wanted closure. From a distance, he saw Nerissa standing beside Cassian. She looked calm. Aurora rested in Cassian's arms, while Nerissa adjusted the child's small shoe. The tenderness of the moment hurt more than any legal loss. Killian once had the chance to share those ordinary moments. He had traded them for attention, pride, and temporary pleasure. He did not enter the garden. He knew his presence would place a shadow over a day Nerissa had earned. For once, he chose not to make her happiness about his regret. He watched long enough to see Cassian kiss Nerissa's forehead. The gesture looked similar to one Killian once used without meaning. In Cassian's hands, it carried care. Killian started the car. Before driving away, he looked back one final time. Nerissa was smiling. She had found peace. He understood that love had not been stolen from him. He had failed to value it while it was still his to protect. Nerissa's life did not become perfect after the wedding. There were difficult days, tired mornings, work pressures, and moments when old memories returned without warning. The difference was how love met those moments. Cassian listened. Nerissa spoke. They corrected misunderstandings before silence turned them into distance. When one person struggled, the other did not treat support as a favor. Their marriage grew through daily choices. Cassian read Victor's storybook to Aurora each night he was home. Nerissa watched from the doorway as the child rested against his chest, listening to words written long before her birth. Kindness given freely never disappears. Victor's message had become the thread joining their lives. Nerissa once helped a frightened stranger because she believed no person should feel forgotten. Years later, that act returned as shelter, medical care, friendship, and love. She had never asked for repayment. What returned to her was not a reward purchased by wealth. It was proof that character leaves a mark. Killian carried a different lesson. Regret reached him after Nerissa no longer needed his apology to move forward. He once believed loyalty meant she would stay regardless of how he treated her. He learned too late that loyalty survives only when both people protect it. Love does not remain strong because of old promises alone. It needs truth when lying feels easier. It needs care when selfishness offers comfort. It needs gratitude before loss teaches its value. Nerissa forgave without returning. Cassian loved without controlling. Killian regretted without receiving restoration. Each choice led them toward a different future. Some mistakes receive another chance. Others become permanent lessons. Nerissa's story showed that leaving pain does not mean giving up on love. Sometimes it means refusing to confuse pain with love any longer. Before we end, share your thoughts in the comments. Would you have forgiven Killian? Do you believe Nerissa made the right decision by leaving? Please like this video, share it with someone who needs its message, and subscribe to Love Tales with Mr. Easton for more emotional stories about love, choices, and second beginnings. Never take loyalty for granted. Never make a faithful partner feel invisible. Never wait for loss before learning gratitude. The right love does not ask you to disappear. It gives you honesty, respect, safety, and peace. Nerissa once left home in a black limousine with tears held behind her eyes. Years later, she stood in a garden beside the man she chose freely, holding the daughter who gave her courage. She had not lost at love. She had finally learned what love was meant to feel like.
Thank you for listening, and thank you for choosing stories that ask more of you. The next story will be waiting.